Hello, everybody. Getting my camera adjusted. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you're live. Oops, should have tested things first. Regardless, here we are. Beautiful encaustic palette before me. Okay, maybe not everybody agrees. I'm okay with a mess in the studio. I'm Patricia Baldwin-Segerbrook, and I am here to share with you a practice I have come to really enjoy, which is reclaiming old tired works. I used to throw them away or give them away. If they were too tired, I threw them away. If they were just tired for me, but I still saw value, I would find people to give them to. Anymore, though, especially since I have a tremendous amount of 4x4 boards from the unsold portion of my Murmur exhibit from 2019 that had over 3,000 of these guys. Since I have that many stored away, I come to them regularly, just experimenting and playing and doing this reclaiming, as I'm calling it, reclaiming and rejuvenating. And it's been a heck of a lot of fun for me. So this is where we start. If this intrigues you, if you'd like more of this kind of content, click the link at the end to watch the introduction video to PurEncaustic, which is a membership or subscription-based group that will begin in January of 2022. Depending when you're watching this, it will begin or it has begun. And it will be regular lessons like this, as well as Q&A. So all of you who have questions, concerns, conundrums, need something like a mentor or coach or tutor at your side at all times, you can consider that space, the PurEncaustic space, just that. Use it to get your questions answered live here on YouTube in video, but then of course saved and shared to everybody who has clicked that subscription button so that you can have it in your archives forever. All right, like I said, these are little 4x4 panels. And what I've done up to this point with these in particular, and this isn't what I do all the time, this is just one example of how I've proceeded. I took my torch and I melted off all that wax. So that's why you see some burned section there. That's the torch overheating the board underneath. And then I went ahead and left some of the texturing of the paint that had melted away. My first advice in doing this particular practice that I'm engaging in today is to set your palette up with just 3 colors. This is a tip that I advocate across the board when I'm doing encaustic or abstraction of any sort, when I'm getting myself started in something new, and always, okay, nearly always, when I'm doing creative meditations. The simplicity of the palette, the simplicity of the tool selection, and just the, what do I want to say? It makes it more accessible. It makes it shuts down the freeze that can happen when I'm staring at an entire palette of colors, not knowing quite where to begin. Now, of course, before you can see I have 2 palettes going with a great deal of color, but what I've done is pull aside a collection of 3. So 3 here, 3 here, and these will become my starting point on these 2 surfaces. So the rule of 3 is what I'm getting at. Makes it easy to jump into something new and just give it a go. As I mentioned, abstraction, I work abstractly. So into these pieces, I will just apply color and let come what comes. I work intuitively. I stick with just these 3 colors, and I have a very base, elementary idea in my head that I just want a few quick shapes. So with that in mind, I begin. These have already been wired, but I'm not going to let that fuss me up. I want to turn it this way, even though that won't be the proper wiring direction, and slap on some paint. Again, sticking with that rule of 3. applying the paint where it just looks interesting as I sweep it across the surface. That texture and intrigue that occurred because of the wax being melted off, the paint being melted off underneath, are the surprise points. They add the delight and intrigue that is the unplanned that can happen when working abstractly and just letting things flow. All right, just like that, 3 colors down. Now, of course, in encaustic, one must always fuse each time a layer is added. So I grab up my torch again, but rather than melt the whole thing off, I'm just going to give it a quick buzz and get those settled. That was more than a quick buzz. These 4x4 surfaces can be a little tricky. So you can see I've overheated. Come on, focus, camera. But that's all right, because I intend to do more fussing. And while that sets up, cools down, becomes a little more solid, I'm going to work into this piece. 3 more colors. I like to do things in repetition. I like to start into a practice and have several boards at the ready to simply continue the flow, because oftentimes, just as I begin, my mind is still really engaged in the process. It's analyzing and assessing and giving me pointers on how to proceed. Yet, as I continue on, it kind of quiets down and lets me work more intuitively. So having that many pieces ready to go at once and working them continuously as I am here lets more of the intuition come through. Sometimes I'll end up with my favorite having been the first one I did, when more of that brain was engaged. But oftentimes, as I work into them, the beauty starts revealing itself in those more intuitive pieces that come as I work into the practice more fully over these repetitive surfaces. So, a couple tips and hints I've just thrown at you. One is that rule of 3. The other being to try to work more intuitively every day, every time, to let the information come through that repeated play, going deeper each time into the practice you're engaging yourself in. Now I'm incising. Now, incising is just taking whatever tool can carve into the wax and kind of seeing what happens. I call these divots and air bubbles and those sorts of things. I call these natural incisings. It's very much the same. They become a focal point when the sorry, I'm getting into the work and forgetting that I need to speak. They become just as beautiful and impactful in the overall composition as the handheld, human-created incisings that I'm doing. Those natural incisings, as I've called them. Because this is not done. No, no, no. A final step in these little nuggets of creativity is to fill those incised lines. Now that'll be, these need to cool down a little bit. What I intend to do is my tar technique, and I will do that later, do it in a video later. But if you're familiar with using oil paint in your work, you can grab an oil stick or oil bar, pigment stick, or oil paint and use that to rub into the surface, fill those incised lines, natural and human-made, and then wipe away the excess to get that pop. Like I said, I'll come back to that in the next live that I do. I want to show one more thing while we're here. This also is a 4x4 painting. Melted some of the paint off just to smooth out the entire surfacing. and then I drew into it. Not happy with that at all. So I've decided to come to my palette and see what I can do with this messy, spilled over palette paint. So I'm grabbing one of the brushes from the tins that I've just removed, getting a lot of that yellow out on my surface. And then I just want to quickly pick up some of that paint and see what kind of luscious grays and greens I get. Could be hideous. It's been known to happen. But it could be intriguingly gorgeous. The mystery lies in the process. I think I'm going to end up liking that. My brush is not holding nearly the volume of paint that it would if I were coming from the pot. There's just not quite as much here on the surface, so therefore it's giving me more of a textured lay of the paint and creating more of that natural incising that I mentioned earlier. Kind of like it. All right. I'm going to continue into these, play with some more of my 4x4s and this palette paint. I will incise into this one and give it its blush in our next video as well with pigment stick or tar. But that's it for this moment. Thanks for coming along. I am refining these videos, changing them up, learning my way around using this format through YouTube and live. So look forward to more. Look forward to better. Thank you for the grace of coming along and giving me this space, trusting that I will show up better every time. And I hope you do too. I'm Patricia Baldwin Segerbrook. If you'd like more of this, you can join, subscribe, become a member of the program that will launch in January of 2022. And it is incredibly affordable. You can subscribe and come back and unsubscribe at any time. So look forward to that. It's at my site, pbsartist.com, or follow the link video that will pop up here any minute at the end of this. Thanks for coming along. See you again.